Hey gang, thanks for tuning in, and today I've got yet another Ecoflow product to review and to kind of show you folks what it's all about. If you follow along any of my channels, I'm primarily use Blue Yeti products because they've worked great for me. However, in the past couple of months, Ecoflow has come out with their newest iteration of power stations. In fact, back there I've got the Delta 3 Plus that's powering a bunch of my stuff here in the shop. That has been absolutely fantastic and I love it. And so I thought it was interesting when Ecoflow wanted to send this to me because I think that they know I'm not a huge Ecoflow fan, or I haven't been in the past. I didn't like the Delta 2 series. I just think the form factor of that thing was not very, I didn't like it. The new Delta 3 and the new River 3 series though, however, are drastically changing my mind the way that I think about Ecoflow. The only gripe that I had on the Delta 3 Plus behind me was the AC parasitic draw. It ate up battery very quickly if you just leave that AC inverter running. So we're going to take a look at that on this River 3 Plus, but I'm going to compare this, guys, if you're in the market for these smaller power stations. I'm going to compare this to the Blue Yeti EB3A, which is what I think is the closest competitor if you are in the market or if you need a small power station of around 500 to 600 watt rated output capacity. So that's how I'm going to do this video. Now there's a lot to unpack because you can see this is not just one unit. I've got the EB600 sitting underneath it, which is another pro of this system compared to the EB3A, is that it is expandable. We'll get to that shortly. So I'm gonna try to make this as quick as we can. I got a lot of notes because again, there's a lot to unpack with this thing. So let me start off with the price. So the price right now, as of making this video, and I'll put a screenshot of the price that I took this morning. If you want to just buy this top portion, this is the River 3 Plus. It's 286 watt hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries. It is $229 or 80 cents a watt hour. That's a little high compared to other power stations. If you buy the River 3 Plus with the EB600, that's going to give you 858 total watt hours of LiPo4 batteries. That's going to be $549, which brings the price per watt hour down to 64 cents a watt hour. That's more in line with industry. Between 50 and 65 cents a watt hour is typically what I would consider a good, a good buy. So if you buy the extra batteries, you get a little bit better deal. This comes, the extra battery, you can get two different sizes of extra batteries. You can get the EB300 or this is the EB600. But of course I did all of the capacity testing with the extra battery, without the extra battery. So let's get into that. The DC capacity discharge test on the River 3 Plus only, no extra batteries. I squeezed out 239 watt hours off of my meter, and that's going to be about 84% efficient. That's industry average, guys. That's not perfect. That's not terrible. That's just right in line of what you would expect. Between 80 and 85% capacity is a good score. When I connected the River 3 Plus to the EB600 extra battery, I got 703 rated watt hours squeezed out of both off of my meter. That's 82% efficient. So we lost a little bit of efficiency, but that's pretty normal when you're doing DC capacity discharge testing. You're not gonna have quite as good of efficiency as just running it off this one small battery, but it's still over 80% efficient, so I'm gonna give that a passing score. I did an AC discharge test off of the River 3 Plus only. I used 186 watt load hooked up to a watt meter, and I got 248 watt hours off of the inverter on this thing, which is about 87% efficient. So this is actually more efficient when you run the inverter than when you run the DC. These inverters on most of these power stations now are very efficient, and you get quite a bit of the actual rated capacity on these power stations. So almost 90%, but not quite there yet. I did a DC parasitic drain test. So I turned the system on through the app. I made the timeout on this feature never. So you can go into the app and you can actually set 1 hour, 2 hour, 8 hour, whatever you want for this power station to completely shut down. I toggled that never switch on because I wanted this to run for about 20 hours. So that's what I did. I ran it for 20 hours. I turned the DC circuit on. And after 20 hours, guys, I only lost 3% of the battery. Of course, there was no load on it, but that parasitic draw or drain off of the DC circuitry after 20 hours only lost 3%. So that's fantastic. Time for the parasitic drain test on the AC inverter. So I've got this whole system topped off to 100%. I don't have any circuits on. I'm going to show you first. I've got the AC timeout set to 12 hours. So we're gonna do a 12-hour test. But I'm gonna go ahead and start a stopwatch as well. So we're gonna hit start. We're going to cut the inverter on, which you can see up there. So After 12 hours, we're going to come back and see how much of this battery has actually drained from the 100% starting point. Gang, we have been going for 9 hours and 5 minutes, and honestly, I'm afraid I'm going to end up falling asleep. But let me zoom in. We're only down to 93% on this battery. So in 9 hours, this has lost 7%. So that's less than 1% per hour, which is drastically better than the Delta 3 Plus. Obviously, it is a smaller inverter, so it's not going to take up as much parasitic drain just keeping it turned on. But I am very happy to see that the parasitic draw on this machine is much, much less than the Delta 3 Plus. So I'm going to give this a pass. The best thing about this power station is this right here, and it's absolutely fantastic. So obviously I have this hooked up to the EB600. What you're missing is any type of cables or wiring or those big Bluetti style expansion battery cables that are huge. I don't know why, I don't understand why yet Bluetti hasn't adopted this system, but there are absolutely no wires connecting that. To connect the River 3 Plus to the EB3A, you simply push down on a lever back here and you pull up. And then there are your connection pins right here on the actual power station, and on the extra battery, you can see the connecting pins that it fits on. So that's so great finally seeing. I know there's some other power stations that I haven't reviewed yet that don't require any big fat stupid cables to connect the extra battery, but this thing is so light, so portable, and it is wire free. And once you put it on, it's connected and you can just pick it up with the top handle. And this unit becomes one. So on a lot of my Bluettis that I have the expansion batteries, it's still two pieces. And so you have to actually move two pieces. With this, it connects, you can pick it up as one unit and you are good to go. The other good thing about this system is that you can take this thing off, use this as a power station, and you can use this battery as a DC output power station. This EB600 has one 140 watt Type-C USB-A output right there. So if you're in an RV, if you're camping with your wife or whatever, and you don't want to bring a huge power station with you for the weekend, you can use this to charge up your phone. Your wife or whoever can use this to charge up their phone, their laptop. Being 140 watts, this will charge up any laptop. So it's great that you can actually use this extra battery. If you don't need that, just simply connect it, and now you've got 800-ish, 858 watt hours with this expansion battery. But I love the fact there's no cables. It's just simple to use, and you can use both of these independent of one another. I think this power station is more geared toward literally using as a UPS. It's got a less than 10 millisecond UPS switchover time, which is fast enough to almost run any type of electronic equipment, servers. It is extremely fast. In fact, it actually has, and I don't have equipment to show it, but this is the first power station that I have that has the USB-B port right here, and that's actually used for a dedicated like NAS or actual server system. I don't have a way to test that. And you'll notice on the back here, you have two AC outputs. I thought that was kind of weird at first until I really started thinking about how I would use this, and I can see this being put on a desk kind of in the corner, and you can plug in all of your cords to your whatever, computer, printer, laptop, whatever. In the back, push this up against the wall, and you don't have to plug anything into the front of it. So it makes a real neat and clean, tidy little setup if you're gonna put this on your desk. Of course, you do still have one AC output on the front as well, along with two USB-A's and a 100 watt USB-C output. So you've got ports up front. So let me just jump in here and show you a couple of these ports and how they work. So again, this is a 100 watt USB output only. So I've got it plugged in, and you can see here, if I get that cord out of the way, that I'm inputting into this power station 92 watts. So the USB output is working fine. So the USB output on this works great. Now let's go to the inverter and check the sine wave and that 600 watt rated capacity. All right, so let's test the inverter here real quick. I've got around a 500 watt space heater that I'm gonna plug into the back of this unit, and I have X Boost turned off. So right now we're at 470 watts, 480 watts, and I think that's probably pretty much a good representation of how I would use this thing. I don't think I would use this little inverter for anything more than 485 watts because you're going to eat this battery up so fast. But let's check the voltage running this. Solid 120 volts, running almost its max rated capacity. Okay, now I'm going to turn on X Boost because I want to show you folks what happens. So X Boost is now turned on. I've got another heater here in the back that I'm also going to plug in. And what you're going to see is I'm going to sit right at 600 watts because I've got X Boost turned on. But look at the voltage. 80 volts. So that X Boost lowers the voltage to run appliances like space heaters and things like that. But for anything else, I would not recommend turning X Boost on, but you can see what it does here in real life, just lowers the voltage. So I'm gonna unplug this and we go right back to 120 volts. So I keep it off, that's why. But let's check the sine wave. And we got perfectly clean sine wave running 480 watts. And now I want to go over some comparisons between this system and the Bluetti EB3A because they're both very similar, but there are some pros and cons of each system. So let me get into that real quick. And of course I wrote them down because I don't have that good of a memory. All right, so the comparison is assuming that you do not have the extra battery in terms of pricing and watt hours for all of this stuff. So this is just going to be for the River 3 Plus only compared to the Bluetti EB3A, because to the best of my knowledge, there is no expansion battery available for the Bluetti EB3A. So pricing again for this is $229. The EB3A is $199. So a little bit cheaper on the Bluetti side, not by much, but it is still a little bit cheaper. This, again, is 286 watt hours. The Bluetti EB3A is 268 watt hours. So the EB3A is a little bit less capacity and a little bit less money. Solar charging, the River 3 Plus can accept 220 watts worth of solar. The EB3A can accept 220 watts of solar. So this setup can actually accept 20 more watts worth of solar input than the Bluetti. They both have 600 watt pure sine wave inverters. This has an X Boost feature up to 1200 watts. I don't recommend using that because it drastically lowers the voltage of anything that you're trying to use over 600 watts. And if you're not careful, you can really damage some things. So I turn that feature off. The Bluetti's got the same thing. I can't remember what they call it, but it traded at 600 watts and I think 1200 watts for their X Boost, whatever they want to call it. But again, I don't test that function because I don't like using it because again, it can damage things really quickly if you don't know what you're doing. This has 3 AC outputs. 2 in the back, 1 in the front. The Bluetti EB3A has 2 AC outputs, so you're actually getting 1 more AC plug on the Ecoflow. They both have 100 watt Type-C USB outputs. They both have turbocharging, so this one will accept up to 350 watts of AC charging, so will the EB3A. If you connect an extra battery to the River 3 Plus, you can actually increase your AC charging speed up to 650 watts. I've never seen it get that high. When I connected the expansion battery to this, I was able to get to around 450 watts. So I've never seen it get to 650 watts. Again, 10 millisecond or less UPS switchover time. The Bluetti calls theirs an EPS, and it is around 20 to 25 millisecond switchover time. So if you're really needing a fast, accurate, reliable UPS, I would pick the Ecoflow. And a big one, this is expandable. EB3A is not expandable. And the Ecoflow, just like the Delta 3 Plus that I tested out and it worked fantastic, is it's got memory on the circuitry. So if you have this Ecoflow turned on and you have the DC circuit on, let's just use DC for a second, and this battery drains itself all the way to 0 and it cuts itself off. When you turn this thing back on, either via solar or you plug it into charge or you plug it into your car, it's going to cut on that DC function automatically without you having to actually hit that DC button on the front. So to demonstrate this memory function that I was explaining to you about, I've got a solar panel hooked up right now outside. You can see I'm getting 32 watts. I have the AC turned on. I'm running just a really light load fan, but I'm going to keep this on all night and into the morning, and this will eventually kill this battery. But I've got my solar panel hooked up to my truck out here. Just a 200 watt panel laying across my back of my truck. And so what's going to happen is this battery is going to die overnight, and then when it gets to around 5 or 6% capacity, this should turn back on with solar input and cut that AC inverter on automatically without me having to come and press that button. So we will check back in tomorrow to make sure everything is working as it should. All right, update on this memory function. It is around 8 o'clock in the morning and the sun has just now poked up. Just now getting some over there on the back of my truck. The power station has not cut on yet. So I'm gonna give it another 2 or 3 hours because at least on my Delta 3 Plus, I had to get to around 5 to 6% capacity before I noticed that the memory port function worked and the actual power station cut on. So as of right now, we are not turned on yet, as you can see, but hopefully in the next few hours, once we get enough juice in it, everything will be working. All right, well, gang, I've got to express my disappointment because during this testing of me showing you folks how this memory port works, this battery station is not cutting on with about 3 hours worth of solar. So my Delta 3 Plus worked fine doing it on this test. However, this particular power station is not cutting itself on, so I can show you folks how the actual memory port function for that AC inverter works. So I'm not gonna let it sit for 3 more hours because that's pointless because this thing is not turned on. But what I wanna do, I'm gonna pull you in closer. I'm actually gonna turn this power station on and we'll see if we're actually gonna start getting solar. So it kind of defeats the purpose of everything, but I wanna make sure and show you folks that the solar is actually out there working. So let's squeeze in tight here. All right, so I'm gonna get this thing cut on now. %, it did die overnight. And we immediately start inputting solar. Not a lot, it's a 200 watt panel out there. It's overcast and whatnot today, so we're fluctuating, but I'm getting anywhere between 20 and 82 watts right there. So unfortunately, what I was hoping to show you did not work, but I wanna make these as honest and clear as I possibly can, and this particular power station, what I was hoping would happen did not. So don't assume or don't think that this power station will cut itself back on if it's connected to solar and it dies overnight with solar connected. Because as you see here, that didn't happen. And they both have apps. This is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capable. The EB3A is only Bluetooth capable, so you can't remotely log into it if you're outside of Bluetooth range. So I think another check in the box for the Ecoflow goes on that as well. And you know, of course, there's no charging brick. You just get a big, fat, juicy charging cable, which I think is kind of funny. I don't think you really need one that big for the system, but there's no charging brick. One thing they don't give you in this setup, which is kind of disappointing to me, is they don't give you a solar panel cable. They do give you the USB type B to USB type A if you're going to use that port in the back to connect to your NAS or some type of server system. And they give you the DC to XT60i charging cable if you want to charge this thing up through your car socket, which is going to give you about 120 watts worth of AC charging speed. So I do wish that they would have supplied a solar panel cable since this is a solar generator. But overall, I think for the price, if you get this set up, 64 cents a watt hour for rated 858 watt hours, I think is a good deal. I'm not a huge fan of small power stations because I typically need a little bit more juice, but I think with the expansion capability, it really kind of makes this thing unique. And again, the fact that you can use this expansion battery separated from the head unit, I think is another plus with that 140 watt Type-C USB output. There's people that love Ecoflow, people that hate them, people that love Bluetti, people that hate them, whatever is your cup of tea. I don't know, but I think this unit did really well for me in my testing, and I do definitely think it's going to end up finding some uses around the shop for me or even on my other main camping channel, because I don't always need a huge power station, so I can take this thing apart and just use this top thing. So yeah, I like it. But guys, check the description below because right now that $229 price for the head unit is on sale, and there is a 5% discount code also that Ecoflow did give me for anyone that wants to buy one. So I think you can add that on top of what the current price is to get a little bit more money off. So guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned.